Raid, powered by fusions since 2019. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bront CatHerder's channel. I am Bront CatHerder, and we're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends. And it's that time this month, as it seems to be every month, that we have another fusion going. This time it is Vaultkeeper Wixwell, and I think he looks kind of good, but we'll break down a little bit more about him as well. But overall, I just want to talk a little bit first about fusions and what they bring to the table. And in fact, one of the most important things about fusions is that, especially as a free-to-play player, not that I'm a free-to-play player, but many folks are free-to-play, they're often not getting legendary champions more than maybe once a month outside of these fusions, maybe twice a month if they're getting lucky. That's fine, that's the way Raid's power structure has been, but that means that a monthly guaranteed chance to get a champion that generally will help an account, which hopefully most fusions will, is a good thing. It feels like a little bit of a grind sometimes because these fusions do take a lot out of you, but a lot of the events do force you to do things that help your account. Champion training can be very helpful for early game accounts. Now, the value in a late game account can be a little questionable, but for early game accounts and mid game accounts, it's very helpful. Even in late game accounts, especially with things like Centranos, where training up some of the epics you might not have used beforehand, it can still be valuable. So there's that. Then dungeon divers and the artifact farming, always good, pretty much no matter where your account is. Meanwhile, you've got artifact enhancements. You need to enhance your artifacts anyway, so might as well do it for an event where you get rewards. Overall, there's a lot of stuff to do. Arena even. The arena medals can be helpful, even if you're in an account where all you're getting is the chests. That's obviously less ideal, but doing arena gives you the materials for forging, and I've talked before about how important forging is, as well as, for most people, the guild hall or the great hall is very useful in advancing your account. So overall, the events that you're doing in a fusion are there to help force you to progress your account, help play the game. Yes, they do drive some engagement, and that's something that the game does, but that's how games work. Just doing the fusion, the account improvement you're going to encounter while you're working on the fusion can be pretty tremendous on an early game account. Even a late game account, you might notice you might have done something that was kind of cool, or maybe you farmed a particularly good piece of gear. Overall, it's well worth spending time doing the fusions most of the time, particularly because the champs are generally somewhat useful. Sometimes they vary from extremely powerful to not very powerful, or in some cases they are weak. But overall, it's a free legendary, and we can't discount how much a free legendary is worth. So in this video, I've got 3 topics that are related to fusions. I've gone on my rant about how fusions can help power up your account. So let's take a look at what resources you want to save for fusions in general. So if you're doing your first fusion, or you're debating whether or not you want to start this fusion, that'll give you an idea of whether or not you can complete the fusion, as well as what you kind of want to aim for the fusion. We'll then go over the fusion calendar for the specific fusion. This is a tool that Raid posts regularly. They do it through their Discord. I know in my Discord I have a link to their Discord announcements, so definitely check that out. I'll also probably post it on my community tab as well. It's a very, very useful calendar, so do check that out. And then we'll take a look at this current fusion and just talk about the actual champion himself and whether or not he's any good. So we're going to swap over to my alt here to look at what a free-to-play account generally is looking for as far as resources to do a fusion. First of all, one of the most important things is you're going to need shards or something to summon. What you're going to need shards for is you're going to need shards for the champion chase and the summon rush, and the type of shards you need are going to be very different. The champion chase tournaments are always going to be on your 2x weekends, and then your summon rushes are always going to be on the progressive chance or the 10x weekends, depending on what type of special event they're running. They've been doing progressions of late, so I suspect it's going to be progressions from now on. Important thing to note is that the 2x makes it easier to do a champion chase, whereas the summon rush is very, very specific as to the value of the shards. You generally want to have the shards for the upcoming 2x, which is generally going to hopefully be either ancients or voids. It may depend on what the weekend is, and occasionally it's a sacred weekend instead of that. But do keep that in mind. Polarium used to have a really consistent schedule. They don't at the moment, so it's a little harder to predict because every once in a while they're throwing Primal Shard 2Xs in there, or sometimes they're skipping around. This weekend, they've already announced it's going to be Ancient Shards, which is what I was planning on because we had a Void 2X fairly recently. And since they don't overlap the 2Xs, two 2Xs in a row, I knew it was probably not going to be Voids. So I've got a decent amount of Ancient Shards. Is 70 enough? You can probably get by with 50 Ancient Shards, depending on what else you're doing. There's other ways to get points, however, as well. It is based off of the quality of champion you gain on your account. So rares are worth a little bit of points, less than rares are worth not much, epics are worth quite a bit, and then legendaries are worth a lot. So 2x Ancients is very good because you're more likely to get epics and legendaries ideally from Ancients, and you usually can get a lot of Ancient Shards through not only just farming dungeons, but also through the clan boss gives them out a lot. There's a lot of rewards to give Ancient Shards. Void Shards are even better because Void rares are worth 50 points compared to the 10 points for Ancient Shards. And then their epics are worth, I think, 350 points versus 250 from the non-voids. And then the legendaries, I believe, are worth 650 points compared to the 500s. So with Void Shards, 30 to 40, and sometimes as low as 25 will actually get you all the points you need for most of the Summon Rush events, whereas the Ancients, you're going to need more than double just because those rares, the 40 points per rare really does eat into how many points you're going to get. However, mystery shards are perfectly viable. If you count on a mystery shard to be a 1 point per one, and every rare you get out of that is 10 points, so it doesn't hurt. Collecting mystery shards from campaign, so running below Nightmare campaign for farming helps a lot. Buying them from the shop helps a lot. You'll see I've got 3,000 on here. I don't like to go below 1,000 if I can avoid it, just because I'd like to be able to, if I absolutely have to, do an entire event through mystery shards in an emergency. Not something I would highly recommend, but it's doable. Summon rushes are where you're going to get points per shards, and generally your sacred shards are worth 500 points, your primal shards are worth about 200 points, your void shards are worth about 120, ancients are worth 20, and mystery shards are worth 1. And that's the only way to get points in a summon rush. That's why sacreds are really, really good. Generally, in most events, if you pull extra sacreds, you can get an extra bonus champion or some extra fragments. And sometimes you have to do that on one of the two summoning events. You have to get a higher tier to get everything. In this particular one we're coming up at, it looks like you just have to get to the higher level to get a bonus epic, which is worth noting, but since it's towards the end of the event, you might want to be careful about that. On summon rushes, you're looking at needing 4 to 6 sacreds. 4 will usually get you close, and then you can fill it in with some mystery shards or other shards if you need to. 6 will almost always guaranteed get you the minimum points, and saving as many as 10 of them is very useful for getting the upper reward. The upper reward is usually less than 5,000 points or has been as high as 5,000 points. So 10 sacreds gives you a lot. Is 10 sacreds a lot? It can be, but if you're farming Ultra Nightmare and you're doing Doom Tower, you can get between 8 to 12 sacreds a month minimum, maybe a few more depending on how lucky you get, as well as the other events that run as well. But on average, you're getting 8 to 12 sacreds just from Clan Boss. And then obviously you have Doom Tower has got 2 of them in there as well. And then there's your monthly shard you can do if you're doing your monthly quests. So there's ways to get sacreds if you're trying. Getting 10 a month is not unreasonable. It's, there's a little bit of luck involved, but this is raid, so there's going to be a little bit of luck involved. As far as champion chase points go, I already mentioned shards, but champions you farm from campaign count as points. They're not a lot, but they count as points. Champions you can get from the market, not a lot, but they count as points. Champions you might use through the fusions. So if you have like the Vaultkeeper fusion that you want to do repeatedly, you can save up these champions, and in fact, they're farmable champions, most of them, other than Justiciar. You can start fusing some Relic Keepers for 2,500 points, or perfuming Broadmaw for 3,500 points, or some of these rares for points as well. So that's one of the ways you can bank some points. I don't think this is the most efficient way to do it. The other option is these fragment summons. So I've got Ustrid right here. I might want to actually summon her. So if I decide I don't want to pull a bunch of shards, or I end up falling short because I don't have enough shards, and that's the thing too. Sometimes you may choose not to pull as many shards as you need because you want to pick particular champs. So this is 500 points for the champ chase. Gomlock, 500 points for the champ chase. In fact, I need to pull Gomlock for the Ramontu missions on this account, so Gomlock may actually be the one I pull during this. Some of these champions are Doom Tower champions, so this is an advantage of doing Doom Tower. Some of these are previous fusions, like Ostrad was the last fusion. Which ones should you pull? Generally, I like saving the Doom Tower champions for CVC because you can never get a duplicate. So the CVC, those are always worth 30,000 CVC points, which is another place to sometimes pull these for points. However, sometimes it's worth just pulling any champion you need, like an Ostrad, who's actually probably going to help this account out. So I'm going to pull her during this. I'm probably going to pull her during this champ chase because I think that would be very helpful. The epics are actually really worth saving as well because this is an epic. It's probably never going to do much on this account, but that's 3,500 points right there in the champion chase. So that's probably the best use I have for this champion. You know, there's some rares you can get. You can get a couple of void rares from the 3v3 shop. There's 50 points each if you wait until a champion chase to pull them. There's obviously epics and Doom Towers were the best place to earn them. If you're doing a fusion and you decide you can't finish the fusion or don't want to finish the fusion, one of the things you can do is keep those extra champions that you've made if they're an epic. If you've only gotten 1 or 2 points of the epic, you needed all 4 of them and you couldn't get to it, or you decided you didn't want to get to it, you hold them in the summoning portal and then you pull them during the champ chase. So that's another way to get champ chase champions as well. Finally, the login champions can count as well if you can manage to save a login champion to coincide. That's a lot of work to get that to happen. I wouldn't recommend going about it intentionally, but if it ends up working out for you, it ends up working out. And that includes daily champions like your Syl the Drakes, or your, any of those daily champions that you can get from the regular login rewards in addition to the special 7-day ones they offer. So the next step is gems and energy. How many gems or how much energy do you need to have saved up for the fusion? Well, you see, I've got 3,000 gems right here, and this is a free-to-play account. I did win a giveaway from another creator, so that's where 500 gems came from. Otherwise, I've just been saving my gems, and I've not been using them to push much content. So I've been doing whatever I have with my daily energy. If I'm getting special energy rewards, I might be using that. Otherwise, I'm not using a lot of my gems. And so I find I'm picking up 100 to 200 gems a day, depending on the tournaments that I'm in, depending on the chests I'm opening, because I'm getting them from Clan Boss. You get them from the arena chests sometimes. You get them from, again, all the tournaments and events. There's all kinds of ways to get gems. So I find that a safe number is at least 500 gems. Is that going to be safe for you? It will probably depend. But the reason I say 500 is a really safe minimum is 500 still will allow me to earn gems through the events as we play through the fusion. Because you're doing events anyway, and you're placing higher in these events, ideally, because you're trying to get whatever champion fragments or actual champions you're looking for. So you build up a lot of extra gems. It also means if you start with 500, you're going to be very careful about when you use those gems. You don't want to use them when you don't need to push content too fast. At the same time, you also want to make sure that you're actually going to finish the content, so you don't necessarily want to leave, I'll run Dragon and finish it overnight, and if I wake up in the morning and something happened and my thing stopped, I didn't finish Dragon. That's bad, so be careful with that as well. So it's a balancing act. The other thing you can do is you get these pots, like we got one from the update that's going to get used pretty quickly. I've got a couple other here from previous daily chests. You get one every other day from Raid. Save those up when you're not using them a day. Now, I don't save a lot of these up because I manage my resources well enough to know that I'm generally going to have enough gems. But if you're really being tight with your energy, you don't use these unless you're at an event where you know you need to use them for some reason. So you save up a bunch of these. You might have 10 refills, which is the equivalent of 400 gems, in your inbox by the time you're getting ready to do a fusion. And that'll help quite a bit as well. So that's the other place you can store energy in addition to having gems. Now, if you want to spend just a little bit, go into the shop here. It is, here we go. The daily gem pack. This is the best deal in Raid. And this is not me telling you to spend. You don't have to spend if you don't want to. As you can see, I don't have it on this account. But this is the best deal in Raid. For 10 bucks, you get 2,000 gems a month. In fact, you get a little more than 2,000 gems a month because at the day of the 30th, this resets. So you can grab the 30th and the 1st on the same day every day if you wish to. You don't have to, obviously. Am I saying you need to spend on this? No. But that 500 number I said, if you've got this, you don't even have to save that many gems because you're going to get 500 or more over the course of the fusion. I still would suggest saving about 500 gems. And if you want to be really comfortable about it, 1,000 gems before the fusion is great. The other thing that gems allow you to do is, we're talking about shards beforehand. This big 11 shard pack for 900 gems is not a bad value. It's not the greatest value. It's not the best use of your gems. Energy is a much better use of your gems overall. But if you're short and you need, a few hundred points in a champion chase, here's 11 more shards. Not the worst thing you could do. So having a decent amount of gems available to you gives you an emergency escape route for a lot of the fusions and generally helps make sure that you can keep on task. Next up, we're going to talk about training fodder. And by training fodder, I'm talking about a couple things. We're talking brews and technically barrels, although I don't like to use the barrels on anything less than a 6-star champion. But brews can be very valuable. Chickens can be very valuable, both in the chickens up here on the top row, as well as having champions ready to use as chickens. This is a 4-star chicken I have, level 25, I know is where my chickens tend to be. And I'll tell you why later. In fact, I'm going to probably do a video on champion training that I'm hoping to get up tomorrow morning. So look for that. And I'll actually, if I can go back and remember to do it, I'll put a link in the video up there. Using brews to get these champions up to level will help you through the champion training. Having extra champions ready to be built helps with the champion training. Having champions ready to turn into chickens on the next level helps you with champion training. So I've already got 12, 13 4-star champions ready to become 5-star chickens. I already have a bunch of level 30 3-stars ready to go to 4 stars. I have a couple of 2 stars and 1 stars ready to go to 3 stars and 2 stars to make more chickens. Now I'll clear out some of these lower end, the 1 stars and the 2 stars pretty regularly to make room for stuff if I have to. But I can literally, in upgrading the rank of all these champions and then giving some of my higher champions brews, I have been able to, in the tavern, finish a champion training without a single drop of energy. So that's all kinds of easy for your resources, saves you a ton of energy, gives you a lot of progression. It's great overall. But if you have this stuff saved up, then it becomes easier. If you don't have this stuff saved up, then you need to make it. And that's generally energy, or it's going to cost you more brews than you might have used otherwise. It's going to take you longer, so it's more time out of your day. So overall, having some of this stuff saved up is great. Now, I will readily admit that this is a luxury of an end game account. If you're not an end game account, you're going to struggle building up this level of resources. The good news is the champion training events are usually a little bit easier for earlier game accounts, especially if you're under level 50. But even if you're over level 50, they're usually not full on as much as they are in the level 80, 90, 100. Just do what you can, especially as a young account. You want to make the most of when you do some of these events. So even if you are deciding you're not going to go for a fusion, if there's a champion training tournament that comes up or a champion training event, you want to focus on upgrading your champions then, because you're also getting rewarded for it more than you would just by building champions randomly. And then finally, if this is a tournament, tournaments also allow you to use skill books. Now, probably not the best use, especially for an early game account. Now you'll see I have a ton of books right here. So for me, if I wanted to book a champion with epic books, I could book several champions and just throw it away, and it's not a big deal. Even the rares, I could throw some books in there, free points if I wanted to. I tend to be still careful with them, which is how I built up that many of them. Obviously, legendary books are much harder to part with. But if you're not going to save them for a CVC, because legendary books are worth a lot of points in CVC, a champion training tournament is the next place to use them because you get extra rewards in the tournament. That's actually fairly new. So if you didn't know that beforehand, that's just a new reminder. That is also only in the tournaments and not in the events. The events only give you rewards for upgrading levels and upgrading ranks. And then Ascension, which is not worth anywhere near as much, but if I were to make Ancora a 5-star, in fact, it looks like, ooh, there's a nice slider here. This is new. I can get her all the way to 6-star with this slider. I'll get rewards for the 5 and the 6-star, so I'm going to save that for the event that happens tomorrow. And that's extra points because I wanted to do it anyway. That's something I also tend to save for CVC, but that's something you can do for training points. And it's another thing that's helpful for your account. So it's something you can save and a resource you can use to make a fusion easier. And finally, the big bugaboo that Raid is always having problems with is silver. And silver is probably going to be the hardest one for you to solve. For me, I'm not building a lot of champions right now on this account. My gear is mostly rolled up. Not all of it is rolled up. That's very helpful for the artifact enhancement events. But I've got enough silver that I can run a couple of artifact enhancement events without a problem. Generally expect 3 artifact enhancement events and make sure you do at least one of them. Obviously, I would recommend doing at least 2 of them. That's going to cost you, they can cost you between 20 to 40 million silver each. I would aim to go into a fusion with about 40 to 50 million silver just to make sure I have enough. You'll earn more silver doing your champion training in general. If you're running campaign, you'll earn more silver running your dungeon divers because that's where you make a lot of your silver and farming things in dungeon divers. You'll get silver from various awards. So there's ways to get additional silver. And, if you need a gear cleanse, maybe actually save some of your gear and do a gear cleanse during a fusion. It'll give you the motivation that I need to clean this stuff up because I need the silver. So 40 to 50 million silver, have a decent number of artifacts available for enhancement. In fact, I generally try to save most of my enhancement for my artifacts for artifact enhancement. I try to stay away from accessories in artifact enhancement because accessories tend to cost about twice as much. So if you're going to burn through 20 to 30 million silver in an artifact enhancement, if you're going accessories, it might be 40 to 60 million silver. So keep that in mind. Keep the silver. So now we've talked over resources. Let's go look into the schedule and take a look at what this schedule is for Wixwill. All right, welcome back. If any of you guys skipped to this part of the video, this is the Fusion event calendar for Vaultkeeper Wixwell. This is made by Raid. It's available in the Discord. I'll probably repost it on my channel as well. This is a wonderful, wonderful tool. You'll notice that says here the exact schedule is subject to change, that sometimes things happen, events get delayed, but generally they try to stick with these schedules as much as possible. The times may vary a little bit, but generally think as far as if you're in US Eastern time, these events start usually around between 5 to 7 in the morning, and they end around 5 to 7 in the morning. So this Thursday, May 9th to Sunday, May 12th, this already started this morning, and this will be done sometime in the morning on Sunday. What you want to look for in these calendars is you want to look for events that you can do that coordinate with each other. And specifically, Dungeon Divers coordinates well with any of the dungeon tournaments, as well as it can work well with champion training events and tournaments, because those are where you're going to be running campaign sometimes, and campaign can also give you some additional gear as well. So we look here, we've got a Dungeon Diver and Dragon happening right here. We also have this champion training event that starts up and overlaps with the Dungeon Divers all the way through till Sunday. Go nuts in Dragon today. There's no reason to save any energy into it. Spend a lot of time in Dragon, work on farming your dragon, get that up, get all those events there. And then if you want to keep on farming dragon afterwards, or you want to farm something else, you can go farm something else to get the Dungeon Divers events. The champion training event then allows you to run more campaign and get some dungeon diving in there as well. Do keep in mind the Dungeon Diver events tend to be higher in points, and quite often maxing out the Dragon Tournament is not going to max out your Dungeon Divers. So You may actually decide to spend some gems early on to get your dragon tournament done, and then casually work on dungeon divers and then reassess where you're at on Saturday. That's oftentimes what I'll do for these events. It's a good strategy. Specifically here, we have the Champion Chase Tournament. This is going to be a 2x Ancients. This is going to be it's unfortunate with this, honestly. One of the nice things about the Champion Chase tournaments with fusions like this is you can save up all these rares and then build a couple of epics and use the epics you're building as champion chase points. So that is a possible total of 1,000 points you could have gotten. You're not going to be able to get any points fusing this Arwid because you're not going to have all 4 of these champions until you're done with this event. Well, that's not true. If you wait till Sunday to finish this, you get the artifact enhancement and the classic arena stuff. So if you're really short 250 points, you can do these 2 events and finish 2 of these other events and then use that to give you an extra 250 points here. So it's doable. It's not the best way to do it, but it's definitely doable. So you'll be saving on Saturday and Sunday. You wouldn't be necessarily pulling all your shards. You'd be planning on this to finish these things. Artifact enhancement, we already talked about. There are 1, 2, 3 artifact enhancement events. There's only one way to get an extra epic. The good news is that you can get the extra epic right here in the summon rush. It's going to be worth a lot of points. Again, expect about 10 sacreds or about equivalent points thereof to get this epic. If you plan on getting that extra epic, you can skip one of the artifact enhancements. If you want to skip a very specific artifact enhancement, I would recommend skipping this last one, as well as skipping this 3rd Dungeon Divers. And then what other 2 events you want to skip as well are fine. But the reason I would work on skipping these 2 is this gives you a chance, if you somehow cannot get this champion because you just don't have enough shards, then you can still decide to do some of those events. However, if you plan on being able to skip a couple events, you then have to track very carefully which events you've skipped, how many champions you've skipped, and be very careful to make sure you don't skip one too many events or accidentally feed somebody or do something else that will cause a problem, and you're then required to get this champion. And if you can't, then you've missed the fusion. So be careful. That's what I would advise with the artifact enhancement events. So again, let's take a look at Dungeon Divers. This is the 2nd Dungeon Diver event. This overlaps with the Ice Golem right here. It overlaps a little bit with the Champion Training event right here as well. See, I'm really good at this art. It looks like there's some overlap here with Fire Knight, but don't expect this. This is not going to overlap. Ice Golem here, it starts off on Sunday. I would probably spend time waiting on it and then go hard in Ice Golem on Monday when Dungeon Divers shows up. Now, if you have energy you need to use, you can use it farming Ice Golem, or maybe you finish up the Champion Training event. I'm not saying don't go into Ice Golem at all. I'm saying don't start spending extra resources into it. So Sunday night, save all your refills you're getting from your daily quests for Monday, and then you can use all that energy in Dungeon Divers and Ice Golem at the same time. Dungeon Divers 3, as we highlighted it right here, that is coinciding with this Champion Training and Fire Knight tournament. So these are going to be another chance of, on Thursday night, don't spend a lot of energy in Fire Knight and Champion Training. Just hold off for a day and then do those with the Dungeon Divers event. This also coincides with Spider Tournament that's happening right here. The Spider Tournament goes from Sunday to Wednesday, so this will actually cover, I believe this will be a CVC, so Tuesday CVC will have a Spider Tournament going, as always it seems to be. Plan on having enough energy to do that one. That actually may not be too bad, because doing Spider and Fire Knight for Dungeon Divers is 2 different dungeon events. That's actually a pretty decent overlap, so it'll help you get Dungeon Divers done. Just be careful that you have enough energy to finish Dungeon Divers in Spider. At least Spider is one of the faster dungeons to run for most people, so overall it's not going to be a huge time sink late on Dungeon Divers. We have the gimme events. Classic Arena is generally what I call a gimme event. If you're in Gold Arena, in Classic Arena we're talking about, you just got to run maybe twice as many dailies as you might normally. So instead of running 5, run 10 a day. Maybe maybe start running it a little bit more that day. Focus on running a bunch of arena. You just have to win a bunch of them. It's usually not too hard. I can usually get it done in less than a day if I force myself to run every refill I've got. You're not going to force yourself to do it. It might take 2 or 3 days, but overall, winning gold 5 gives you a lot of points in Classic Arena. It's not that hard. You're down in silver. Well, you can certainly start pushing, but your points are going to be lower because you're probably also a under 50 account. Getting into gold is generally pretty easy now. But so generally those are pretty gimme events. And then obviously, as we mentioned, we've got Dragon right now. Dragon's running with speed. Ice Golem, I don't know what Ice Golem is going to have as far as the 3x, but there's usually a 3x of some type of gear going on. They had Reflex last time, so I wouldn't surprise if it's Counterattack. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cursed. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Provoke. Those are probably the 3 other sets that they're going to push for Ice Golem. Fire Knight just had a 3x Savage, so I suspect that's going to be a 3x regeneration gear, which is well worth having on any account. Especially for an earlier game account, getting some of that regeneration gear can be great for progressing through faction wars. And then Spider may or may not have a 3x of something. It'll be a faction if it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But Spider's a different animal because it's not like you're getting different types of events. Now, if they had like a 3x banner, that'd be kind of interesting, but I don't think they're going to do something like that. So this is the calendar. This is where you can break it down. And this is where you really want to spend some time planning. So you want to know what you're going to tackle. And as I explained, some of the stuff that I would tackle and how I would tackle it. You want to kind of plan on, do I have enough shards to pull for the extra epic? I'm likely to do it. And if I do that, then I will probably not do every single one of these other events. And that means I might get to keep a copy of the epic, or I might have a couple of extra rares floating around. But it also means I can kind of take it easy on a few events, and if I miss one, it's not the worst case in the world. If you can't miss one because you know you don't have enough sacred shards or enough shards in general to do the summon rush fully, and keep in mind, you do have to do the summon rush for the rare as well. So this rare is going to be the first reward for summon rush, and this epic is going to be the reward for the second summon rush. So you are going to have to summon some shards. Then if you don't have enough for the epic, you can't miss anything. So you have to be on task, and that's why having this calendar is helpful. You can just go into Paint. I'm using GIMP, which is a free image editor, Photoshop type program. But you can just use MS Paint to mark this up. You can build a spreadsheet if you want to. There's a couple of content creators that used to build spreadsheets. I think they stopped because Raid put out these really nice calendars now. Overall, this is very good for planning what you need to do, knowing how long you need to do it, or at least how long you have. Just keep in mind, depending on where you live, these Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday events can be at different times. For me in the US, when this says it runs on Sunday, I'm never awake before this is done because I'm in bed by midnight. I'm awake and getting up at 8 in the morning. By 8 in the morning, this event is done. So just be aware. If you're in Australia, it's going to be a very different time for you. So I recommend grabbing this calendar, using that to plan out. Hopefully my plans here have helped you out. So we're going to talk about actual Vaultkeeper Wixwell and see if he's any good. This is Vaultkeeper Wixwell. He is the first champion that we as a community have had a chance to vote on to create him to build his skills. So there's definitely been a bit of controversy of is he good or is he not good? I think some of that stems from people thinking that they liked different abilities better or worse, or getting invested in having certain abilities, and then that they didn't get what they wanted, well, he's trash. And that's not a good attitude. There were several good options. I think it actually would have been really hard to have made a bad champion unless we started mixing different types of skills. So if we had taken one support, one defense, and one attack skill, I think it would have made him a poor champion. We ended up choosing all of the defense skills, I believe. Not all the ones I would have picked, to be fair. But let's go over his kit and take a look at what he brings. So first of all, he has an aura. So he's got a ally defense in all battles by 28%. Not the strongest all battle defense aura. They go up to 33. It's a decent one. It's usable in any content, which means that he's usable as a lead in any content that you could ever use him in. And that's valuable because you'd often end up with champions that don't have auras that are even usable. So it's nice to have a champion with a usable aura. Going backwards here to his passive, at the start of each round, he places a counterattack buff on this champion for 1 turn, and this buff cannot be removed. At the end of this champion's turn, place a counter buff on them for 1 turn as well. So basically, he starts off every round with counterattack, and at the end of his turn, he puts counterattack on him for 1 turn. So he will always have counterattack up unless it is stripped off of him in between his turns. Can be useful. That means he's going to be doing a lot of counterattacking. Is counterattack the best thing to have? Maybe. He's probably not going to be doing a lot of damage, but it means his A1 is going to go off more often. So we can certainly take a look at that. His A3 here is a 5-turn, bookable to 3, only requires 2 books, so that's very nice. Places 2 intercept stacks on a target ally, also places 60% increased defense and a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to his defense. Defense-based shields are generally very good. Tatora has pretty decent shields. Valkyrie has some of the best shields in the game. Helicath has some of the best shields in the game. They're all defensive-based shielders. So defensive shields tend to scale very well. That's good. You're already a defensive champion as well, so you're probably going to build in with some defense. It means defense is a little more valuable than HP on him. Probably means he's not going to be as good in PvP because HP is more important than defense in PvP. But still, a good selection of skills and buffs here. The thing to note is this intercept is a brand new buff. Intercept intercepts CC buffs. So CC buffs are things like your provokes, your freezes, your stuns, your sleeps are probably the best examples of that. But even sheep is a CC buff. So if you have a stack of intercept and you get debuffed with sheep, you get debuffed with stun, one of those intercept buffs goes away. The way this appears to work is this buff sticks around until they actually intercept something. And they don't increase like normal buffs that might increase, but they can get reset to 2 if you haven't used all your stacks. So overall, that's very, very good. This allows you to protect people from sheep in PvP, so there's that. But it also allows you to protect from like the stun for the dragon, so there's a PvE use for it. Or the sleeps that you might get from several other champions. There's all kinds of waves where this might be particularly helpful. In Hydra, this will help intercept the fear head as well. So there's some fear that gets intercepted from this. So overall, intercept is an interesting new buff. How valuable is it going to be in the long term? I'm not sure, but it's a new skill, and quite often new skills that get introduced are valuable. And that's one of the reasons I think he's probably going to be worth going for, just to make sure you have somebody with this intercept. In the end of the time, he may end up not being the best champion in the world, but, you know, we'll take a look at the rest of his kit and see how valuable he is. All right, so 4-turn, bookable to a 3-turn cooldown with an extra 25% buff debuff chance. So, attacks all enemies, 75% chance, bookable to 100, of placing decrease attack, the big version, 50%, for 2 turns. Also increases the duration of all ally buffs for 1 turn. So if his skill stopped right here, this would be a very good skill. Decrease attack, very useful in Hydra, very useful in wave-based content. Not bad in PvP, actually. But overall, very, very good. Attacking all enemies can be good. I don't know how much damage he's going to do. If he does decent damage, that's great. If he doesn't do decent damage, it's not that exciting. But he also increases the value of all shields on all allies. The value of each shield is increased proportional to the total number of buffs which had their duration increased. Now, I've seen some of the testing by other CCs. This is not working properly, is most likely what's going on. It doesn't really increase the shield in any noticeable way. It could be it's not counting all the buffs, it's just counting the buffs on a specific target. It could be they forgot to actually put a multiplier in there, so it's just doing it by a certain value and it's not actually increasing by the number of buffs out there, regardless, the shield doesn't appear to be increasing that much. So, from a value of the champion standpoint, I would ignore this. Ignore the fact that the shields increase at all. They might fix it later. In fact, hopefully they will. I know some CCs have been in contact with Polarium and talking with them to see if there's a problem with it, if it can be buffed or be fixed. Don't write off the champion because he's not doing these shield increases yet. Now, if they never buff it, then maybe you might not find as much use for him. But if they buff it and you decided to pass on him and then they buff it a couple of days into the fusion and it's too late, you're going to be really upset. So don't skip him just based off of the shields not increasing very well. If this gets buffed to some manner where the shield increase is pretty good, this is another Brogni type champion. Shield increasing is one of the ways you can add survivability to your team. It's great for Hydra. It's great for Clan Boss. It's great for a lot of content where you might use shields to keep your teams alive. This overall, very, very good ability. Finally, his A1. He attacks one enemy 2 times, so a 2-hitter makes him kind of useful in some content like Fire Knight where you need multiple hitters. Each hit is a 40% chance of making a provoke, bookable to 60. If the target is a boss, it is 80% bookable to 100. Now, where is this provoke going to be super valuable? Well, in PvE, provoke is super valuable in Hydra, and provoke is actually super valuable in the Magma Dragon. Now, the Magma Dragon's not one of the harder bosses in the game, but if you don't have a good provoke champion, like a Black Knight or a War Chief, the Vaultkeeper is a good champion. And in fact, the Vaultkeeper probably can replace either of those 2 champions and probably give you a little more overall utility because you're increasing your buffs. So if you have other buffs that are getting put out of your champions, you've got that. You've got a bigger shield, so you can take more of the damage. Overall, his big shields, even without being buffed, should help you survive. So for a very early account, I think he'll be a great champion to help keep you alive. And the provoke just means that champions are, instead of attacking your weak nuker on a wave, it's going to attack your strong defense champion, who may also happen to have a shield, who also has a counterattack, which means he'll counterattack and re-put the provoke on, hopefully, as well. So there's a lot of synergy in his account, and overall, I think the kit's very good. So I would recommend fusing him if you've got the resources, or you think you could get the resources, aka you're willing to spend a little bit of money. I don't think I would spend money specifically to get him, but if you're thinking about spending some money to get the gem pack, for example, then I would think about maybe going for him because now you're going to have all the energy you need. You're going to buy some shards. I don't like buying shards. It's fun, but long-term energy and gems are worth more on your account than shards in most cases. So I think he's a great champion. I think that he will be very helpful for early game accounts, with the provoke adding a lot of extra control and the shields adding a lot of extra protection. So he will help clear content and keep champions alive. I believe it was Hell Hades did a video on him where he ended up not quite soloing, but mostly soloing Dragon early on with okay gear. Because he could keep himself alive, and yes, the poisons eventually wore him down, and it was very, very close. But just in the shields with no healing, he was able to keep several people alive for quite a long time to survive in a very long run, and that's a valuable skill. So not needing a healer on a wave and instead using shields can help you get through a lot of content. Is he the best champion you're going to find? No. We've actually had, in fact, the past 3 fusions have been better than he is, I think. Increasing buff duration is a rare skill, very powerful. Provoke is a skill that is still probably undervalued and a very good skill. And decent shields. Cannot complain about decent shields. A lot of content where decent shields is good for. And the counterattack thing is just kind of nice. So overall, I would recommend going for him. I think he's a worthwhile champion. So hopefully you found this video very helpful, and definitely appreciate you sticking around to the end if you stuck around for the end. If you don't mind giving me a like and a subscribe if you have not done so already, I definitely appreciate it. I'm trying to grow the channel. I would like to become an official content creator for Raid, so it would help me out quite a bit. Hopefully, regardless of whether or not you decide to go for them, you have fun in Raid over the next couple weeks. I'll keep putting some videos out. Hopefully you find them helpful. And until then, I'm Bront CatHerder.